This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Welcome back to Inside the Paint. Reading some of the comments. There's so many good ones. There's so many good questions. And then I see some of the comments about Bam Adebayo. And it's like, I sometimes it makes me wonder if people understand just what the Heat have in Bam Adebayo and how rare it is to have somebody who can do it. You know, so many people in the chat are rightfully praising Rob Williams and how incredibly. What you have in Bam Adebayo is somebody who can guard 1 through 5, can do a lot of the same things Rob Williams can do when it comes to chase down blocks, weak side defense. And oh, by the way, he can run the offense with the ball in his hands as a point center. Like, guys, I get it. There's another level that we'd love to see him get to when it comes to getting his own shot, when it comes to hitting a consistent outside jumper, maybe a post move or two. But come on, man. Like, let's understand what you have in the totality of the player and what he brings to the roster and what he brings to this team. So I'm going to be honest, any questions, comments that are just ripping him for no particular reason, I'm just ignoring. I'm going on like I'm not.
You know what, Clay? It's like my mailbag at AskIra@sunsettle.com. I get the Bam Adebayo questions, and I get the Eric Spoelstra's not a good coach ones. And then people get mad when you didn't answer me yesterday. What are you standing up for your guy? What's he not going to answer your questions? And I'm like, okay, if you have a guy who's universally accepted, at least as a top 5 current coach, some would say top 3 or even higher, there's certain debate points I'm not going to have. I'll debate Kyle Lowry's conditioning if you want. I'll debate who should start in Duncan Robinson's contract if you want. I'm not debating that Bam Adebayo stinks because that's stupid. I'm not debating that Eric Spoelstra can't coach because that's dumb. And I'm not going to debate for the rest of my life Jimmy Butler's 3-point shot. It happened. You get over it. You move on. And that's that. Other stuff I'm open to. Send your questions and letters. But those 2 things especially. The Bam's not good enough and they need to retrade him. And the Eric Spoelstra, they need to get another coach. Like, what are you arguing with there? But I digress because we got rumors to attack.
Why can't we be nuanced? Like, it's okay to say Bam can work on some of this stuff. But like, oh, you got to get rid of him. Somebody called him Bum Adebayo. Yes. Like, come on, man. Like this, no. Rumors, trades, all this stuff. I want to start with the big one. 2 big ones, actually.
Okay.
The one we've been hearing for a while, Donovan Mitchell. And Ira, I'm going to say this. Unless and until Donovan Mitchell makes a public stink, and by public stink, I mean the people in his corner find a way to get it out, even more than what was said to Adrian Wojnarowski a couple of weeks ago about, he's not thrilled about Quinn Snyder, because there has to be a massive public stink. And privately, he has to say, I want to go to Miami or pretty much nowhere else. This ain't happening anytime soon. And we're nowhere near where we need to be down the road of the public stink in order for this to be realistic yet. That doesn't mean that it can't happen. But when you're talking about draft night coming up tomorrow night and some things that have to happen relative to the Heat's assets, the Heat are going to have to do something tomorrow night, I think, to make any sort of a trade for Donovan Mitchell realistic. And I want to get into that. But as far as Donovan Mitchell goes, in your mind, what would even have to happen for this to become realistic? And where are we in that sort of, based on who you've talked to in the NBA, relative to him staying in Utah or forcing a trade out to anywhere, much less Miami?
It comes down to one thing in which Utah is slow playing, and that's the coaching decision. And right now, there's still 15 viable candidates in contention to coach the Utah Jazz. Well, I'm sure Donovan Mitchell has his own list with his representation of, here's the best guy for Donovan Mitchell of the 15, here's the worst guy for Donovan Mitchell of the 15. If they pick someone lower on that list where Donovan says, really? You got rid of Quinn Snyder for that? Then I think Donovan Mitchell maybe says, you know what? I understand that it didn't work out for Quinn. You couldn't make it work. But I don't like this choice of coach because player X, Y, and Z have told me they've had issues with him before. I want out of here. That's one reason. Number 2, it might be that Danny Ainge subtly arrived this past season, but basically is planning to blow the whole damn thing up anyway. And this is all sort of some part of some major Danny Ainge, I'm going to blow up and remake the Utah Jazz just like I blew up and remade the Boston Celtics. Well, if Donovan Mitchell all of a sudden sees the worlds colliding around him, and all of a sudden tonight Mike Conley Jr. is traded, and all of a sudden Rudy Gobert is off to Chicago, he can say, hey, I get to play with Patrick Williams. I like that trade. I'm good. Or he might say, I don't need you to tell me that you're redoing the team and in 2 or 3 years, Danny Ainge will achieve his vision. I want to win this year. I wanted to win last year. So I think we need to see, number one, what Danny Ainge is doing. Number two, what happens with the coach. But to your point, yes, and we'll get into this maybe or maybe not, depending on time today, that he can trade up to 3 first-round draft choices in a major package, but one of them has to be tomorrow night at about 10:30 or so, drafting for another team. So if the Heat takes a player they like and then says, you know what, this is generic player X and we can include him in a trade, maybe they could this summer. If you don't sign him, he becomes a flexible contract to be traded, but more likely you're going to have to draft for a team for what they wanted 27. For Utah sitting there and going, well, not in the first round. Wow, if Jalen Williams from Arkansas is available and replacing Rudy Gobert, if you take him, give us your next year's first-round pick and your 2028 first-round pick, and we think you're going to stink, then maybe we can make a trade. So, Clay, I agree. If the Heat pick for another team, if the Heat come into the media room tomorrow night, we're sitting there and going, guys, we're not going to have Player X on a conference call today because he has laryngitis, because the Zoom connection's not working. And we're not bringing him down to FTX Arena on Friday because it was one of the 900 flights that were canceled this week, so we can't make it work. Man, something's a little bit fishy.
In the words of the church lady, how convenient, right?
Yes.
Like, and so that's the thing you look for. But the thing with Donovan Mitchell and why this thing, it's too close. And I think it's interesting what you're saying, because I thought the same thing about slow playing the coaching thing. Because it's kind of like when it's put out there that the coaching situation is the reason why Donovan Mitchell may not be happy there, well, then you wait until after the draft to seriously address it. It limits the number of teams who can go after a Donovan Mitchell, and the Miami Heat are in that corner because you're talking about the level of assets that it's going to take to get a player like that. The reason why the Heat are even reasonably in that conversation is twofold. Number one, Tyler Hero, and number two, because for the first time in forever, right now, you have the ability to trade 3 first-round picks. After tomorrow night, you don't, unless you do something tomorrow night. I'm going to get into that in a second. But again, people are asking about Bam. And the question is, why is he off limits for honest conversation? He's not off limits for honest conversation. But there is no honest conversation that begins or ends with Bam stinks or Bum Adebayo. It's absurd. Yes, we can have honest, nuanced conversation about the player and what he can do to improve. But like when you're throwing out there, oh, we need to get rid of him. You don't understand what you have in Bam Adebayo if you think you need to just dump him. That doesn't mean that if there's like, if Dallas, if Luka Doncic came out tomorrow, and
I'll give you one, Clay. If you could package PJ Tucker and Bam Adebayo for Joel Embiid, the Heat would at least listen. Now, PJ Tucker probably wouldn't want to be in Philly under those circumstances without Joel Embiid. But if you just, you know what, we're just playing pie in the sky, radio guys here on the Slomin's, inside the paint show, and you want to throw that out there, yes. If you're telling me, Ira and Clay, I just want you guys to address this. Would the Heat be willing to trade Bam Adebayo and PJ Tucker, a sign-in trade for Joel Embiid? Yeah, they'd at least think about it. Andy and Pat and Adam Simon and Nick Harrison would at least sit in the room there and go, okay, Spo, how would you make this work? Jimmy and Joel together and the rest of the pieces we have. Yes, then they would. But it wouldn't be because, thank God we're finally rid of Bam and we got him out of there. No. Yes, so there could be deals you could do. If Joel Embiid comes out and says, I am sick of this. I am sick of seeing Kawhi's shot bounce off the rim. I'm sick of seeing us going out in the Eastern Conference semifinals every single year. Then maybe you say, okay, I would say this. There probably are 5, maybe 10 players that you would consider trading Bam Adebayo for, but only 5 or 10 players that you would consider trading him for. But again, those would be reasoned, nuanced deals, not, we got him out of here. Man, that extension, what were we thinking? Not for that kind of reasoning.
So that's the level of honest conversation. If you want to have an honest conversation, starting in there. I mean, it's not he stinks, we need to get rid of him, we need to change how we approach the game. No, you got the number 1 seed and you were within 1 shot of the NBA Finals, largely because of what you can do defensively with Bam Adebayo, with PJ Tucker, being able to switch 1 through 5. And that's why when you start to get into these conversations of we need to get bigger, well, there's a push and a pull with that. Like there isn't another Robert Williams out there who you're comfortable, you can go big next to a Bam and he can switch it. There aren't a whole lot of guys like that out there. So yes, those are the types of honest, nuanced conversations that we can have, but nothing that starts and ends with let's get rid of Bam Adebayo. He's not worth the max contract. Every single team in the league would tell you he is. As far as tomorrow night and these rumors, the Donovan Mitchell, the things like that, this is something I'm looking for, Ira. And people are asking about, are the Heat going to make a big splash trade? I think I would say, before we get into this, I want to pose this question. Better or worse than 50-50 that the Heat make some sort of a deal tomorrow night?
I would say better than, but we might not know they're making a deal tomorrow night for the reasons you and I just mentioned, that the Heat could wind up drafting a player for another team. And maybe our good friends Woj or Shams will let us know ahead of time, or maybe the Heat will subtly come downstairs and tell us, guys, hey, didn't hear it from us, but I'd be careful writing how player Y fits in with Eric Spoelstra's system. You may want to finesse this a little bit. Then you would know. And the rule there, and Clay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, is sometimes you can't complete certain offseason trades with next year's cap money until July 6th at noon. So there's a whole bunch of these we see where a team makes a trade and then there is radio silence. They simply can't say anything. Pat Riley comes down tomorrow, 1 a.m, sits at the podium in FTX Arena and on Zoom and says, guys, we're not going to talk about the draft pick, but I'm really excited about Summer League. That's your tell. Or more likely, Pat Riley doesn't come down after the draft tomorrow. The Heat says, we're not going to have anyone available. We apologize, guys, and we'll see you guys when our Summer League team comes in starting next week. So it'll be subtle. So I think the Heat will do something this offseason. They always do. I think they have enough trade chips lined up. This might be their best chance to put together a package in years. 3 first-round picks tradable, as you mentioned. Tyler Hero, an attractive asset who is approaching extension deadline. Someone else can decide the extension level if you trade him. And a sweet spot contract with Duncan Robinson, which 1 is tradable, and 2, he no longer is essential because of Max Strus. So I'm not so sure you have components A, B, and C as lined up, or they really have had that lined up since last summer when they had Precious Achiuwa and Goran Dragic's salary to throw in there.
Yeah, but even then they didn't have the picks. And that's where, and this is where I'm going with this thing for tomorrow night and why I think it's significantly higher than 50-50 that they make a deal. The chances of you getting a player with the 27th pick who is going to significantly contribute to this current championship roster next year, I can't see it. Not to the point where you're looking to get better, because the 27th pick is often either like a guy that you may have actually heard of from college basketball because he wasn't good enough to turn pro after his first or second year, or a player who's like over in Europe and the Heat have done ridiculous scouting over there. So this is what I'm seeing, Ira, and what I think is the most likely scenario with this team. They're going to make a move tomorrow night. This is just my opinion. It would not surprise me in the least, Ira, that move is a trade of tomorrow night's 27th pick for a 2025 first-round pick, and then X. Whether it's a second-round pick tomorrow night, multiple second-round picks in the future, for this reason. Donovan Mitchell has not forced his way out yet. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. The level of player that you can get to contribute to this year's championship roster to make a run in 2023 is significantly higher if you look around the NBA at the types of players, the types of names that we are hearing are available than anybody you could get with the 27th pick. The way the NBA Stepien rule works, let me get that right, it's Stepien?
Ted Stepien. Yeah.
So Ted Stepien was executive with the executive or owner?
Owner of the Cavaliers, who traded every first-round pick he could find stuck inside the cushions of the couch. Yes.
Loved to ditch all of his first-round picks, and the NBA basically created this rule to save teams from themselves that you can't trade picks. You have to have picks in you can't go consecutive years without first-round picks.
You can't have future consecutive years without first-round picks, correct.
Right now, the Heat don't have a 2025 first-round pick, and it will hamper their ability to make a significant move after tomorrow night. So you're on the clock right now. if you're going to make a significant trade this offseason, you either have to do it before tomorrow night, or you have to trade for a 2025 first-round pick or another future first-round pick that you can package, because you're limited. And the types of players that we're talking about, if you get to these big names, you're going to need more than 2 first-round picks to make it happen, just to get to the table with these guys. So do I think there is a deal coming tomorrow night? Because the question was about a major deal. Is there going to be a major deal, like a landscape shifting deal where you're bringing in a Damian Lillard, where you're bringing in a Donovan Mitchell, a Bradley Beal? No, I don't see that happening between now and the end of tomorrow night. I do see some sort of a deal happening, Ira, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least if it is a let's kick the can down the road on our assets for when one of those players asks out, or for when we get closer to 8 p.m. the night of free agency, we can start to make calls and maybe make one of these deals work for a player like a Malcolm Brogdon or somebody along those lines.
Yeah, I like your thinking. We were texting about this, that once you trade for a pick, even 24, 25, or 26, you're opening up another chance after tonight's draft to, again, package 3 first-round picks. I don't know why it is. I don't know if it's the rule of 3, but it seems like in these major deals, whether it's what Boston did with Brooklyn when they made their mega deal, what Houston did with Harden, it always seems it takes the power of 3. Like that's the sweet spot that teams look for. So I agree. If you can still position yourself after tonight that you have 3 picks, and here's the deal. Sometimes with some of these players, it gets sideways later in the offseason. We saw that with Kyrie Irving before in some of his stops, where he decided closer to the start of the season, get me out of here. We saw that with James Harden a month into the season. It was get me out of here. So if you have those in your war chest, hey, maybe the deal you're putting together for your next big thing doesn't come until late July or August or September. So yeah, Clay, I could see that. I could see that. Build back your war chest tonight. It's not like number 27 was going to immediately make you that much better. And then you have your assets still in place. You still would have 3 first-round picks to throw into a deal plus pick swaps. You still could conceivably, if you want, trade Tyler Hero. You still could, if you want, trade Duncan Robinson's contract. But it doesn't have to be June 24th. It could be July 24th or August 24th, September, October, November, down the road. So you're futurizing your assets. So I could see something like that. And again, that's what I hate, sitting there all night at FTX Arena watching the draft. The Heat's on the board, and Woj tells me this next pick is going to the Denver Nuggets.
Right,
and I've done
you can't do anything.
Mock draft, and Jake LaRavia and the players the Heat are going to take. But you know what? It's part of covering the Heat, because think about this. The last player the Heat took in the first round lasted 10 months. Precious Achiuwa was drafted in November, was gone by the following August to make the Kyle Lowry trade. So sometimes it's just a gift that's there to borrow.
Shocker, we're running late. I want to ask you about this after the break. Kyrie Irving.
Yep.
Is there any chance? So you're telling me there's a chance. That and more next.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.